Click the bell icon to get latest videos from Ekeeda.
Hello friends, today we will discuss about how Windows API we can share a memory using the memory mapped file systems. What are the ways and what are the constraints of having this type of systems and a program to illustrate the sharing of memory creation. In Windows API, we can create a region of shared memory using the memory mapped file features creation and establishing a view of the mapped files. Now when we are doing this, first we have to create a file mapping on which the file to be mapped. After that, we should create a view of the mapped file in the process's virtual address space. Then a second process can open and create the map of the view file and then use the particular portion of the mapped file. Now the portion that is being a view of the mapped file of a second process then can be used as a shared memory object which can be enabled to communicate between the two processes. Here we are using an example where we can see that a producer process is producing or particularly creating a file that is to be mapped using the memory mapping file. After the file is created, then it will create a view of the mapped files in the producer process's virtual address space. And after the producer process has completed its creation and the viewing, then a process known as consumer process will create a view of these mapped files on its own virtual address space and read the message that is written by the producer on that particular shared memory object. Now we will illustrate this. First, the producer process create a file or memory mapped file that is needed to the mapped using in the Windows API features can be used with the create file function. Next, a handle to this file will be passed to create the mapping of this function to this memory mapped files. It can be thus created with the create map file function. After that the mapping has been established, now we can pass this mapped handle to the create view of map file function which can be used to create the view of the portion of the map file that is to be in the own virtual address space of the processes. Now that entire portion or the particular portion of the mapped file can be then used as a view. Now whenever we are using this view, we can thus using the producer is written a message that is a shared message say in that particular shared memory object. The call to the create file mapping system call will result of creating a memory or a named shared memory object known as shared object. Now that the producer will create a view of this particular shared object, that as a consumer should be create the same view on the same mapping object of this shared object. Now this named object then created by the user in the consumer process's address virtual address space that the process has been created and now you can use the view of this map file. So the last three parameters here we are specifying 0 as we want to entirely file map to this particular system. Now if we want a particular portion of the file to be mapped, then we can use the offset and size as the parameter of this function. Note that we cannot first establish a mapping of the entire function, that is not needed. We only bring the mapping, the portion that is required for the file to be mapped. Now after that the producer will write to the shared object any message that it wants to get the consumer to. Now if we move to the consumer process, then it is done exactly like the producer process along with the creation of the view of the mapped file, and that mapped file portion will be created in the consumer's virtual address space. Now the map view of file function will return the pointer to this shared object which in turn give us the access to the region of the shared memory or the file that is mapped as a view of the shared memory, which can thus then read by the consumer process as exactly the shared message. Now after the consumer process has created the view and read out the process, then both the process will terminate and end the view by calling the unmapped view of file function to the exact program. Now we will see the program that how it is coded inside the Windows API memory mapping features. We have created two handles. One is for file creation, another is for the mapping of the file as in memory mapped IO. Now we are using a void parameter that for Windows API is LP void and num is LP map address, which will then signify the mapping address or the portion of the mapping addresses particular section. Here we are first creating the file using the create file and returning that file handle to the h file handle. So the name of the file we are creating is temp.txt here. Next, the modes of the file we are specifying is generic read or write, that we are giving the file a read or write access. By the next three parameter, we are indicating that no sharing of file, default security, and the file will be open always. And the last two parameters of the create file function is the file attribute normal, that are the default file attributes are given, and by this null we are specifying that no templates we are adding here. Now we are creating another handle to this mapping of file by creating the create file mapping function. We are passing this created file, that is h file handle, as a parameter of this create file mapping function. Now after the handle is passed to this create file mapping function, we will introduce the next parameters. The next two parameters are for the default security, that is null, and the read-write access to this mapping of the file portion is also by the page read-write permission. Now the next two parameters we are specifying here 0 and 0, which is used to define the page offset and size if the subportions of a file is need to be mapped. But here the entire file is mapped, so you are using 0 and 0. The last parameter is the text that we use to display by the producer process is writing to the mapped file, which is the word share. Now after we have created the map file and establishes the mapping memory file, now we will create a view of this map file in the particular virtual address space of the process. Now after this file map all access function, we are giving the read write access, and with this hmap file we are passing this handle of the mapped file to this lp map address, as we know that the map view of file returns the actual shared memory object address. And this function will return in the lp map address to create the region for writing in the shared memory. Now the writing to the shared memory, that is the LP map address we are using, and we are placing the text "Hi friends" using the sprintf function, that is the string printf function. Now that we have created and written to the shared memory object by the producer process, so now we will finish this and close the view of mapping using this unmap view of file function. And at last we will close the handles we have created for the file creation and the file mapping. Now we will move to the consumer processes part of creating the view of the shared memory and read out this message of "Hi friends" from that shared memory. See, here we are creating only one handle, that is the mapping handle, not the file creation handle, as it is to be managed by only the producer process. And the parameter for storing the address of the shared memory, that is the LPMP address. Here we are creating the open map file or the HP map file handle. For this open file mapping function, we are passing with the file map all access, that is the read write access. Now with the false, that is no inheritance is required, and last the text share that we have created using the producer processes. Now in order to access that particular shared object, so the view of memory my file function should be returned in this memory address where the consumer can read from. Here we are using same as the handle for the mapped file, the read write access permission, and this specifies that entire file has been mapped for the consumer process too. Now the consumer is reading from the process by the LP map address, which is now storing the address of the shared object on which the producer has written "Hi friends." So it will be read by this read message %s that this LP map address has value of "Hi friends." After it has read from the LP map address, so now it will close that mapped portion by this unmapped view of file just as the producer process with this parameter LP map address. And finally, using the close handle function, it will close the handle of the mapped file. So in this way, a shared memory region using the memory mapping files attributes of the Windows API can be created. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and subscribe to Ekeeda.